Hey everybody, it's Melissa. I am really excited because I haven't done an interview with Kim Anami and we were just talking about this 4 years. So it's been a while and I'm so excited to be able to interview this fine fox because she's going to be sharing with us a whole bunch of knowledge about sex, how to open up your world, and even increase your health through sex, which I know for some people might be intimidating, but we're going to get right into it. So thank you, Kim, so much for being here.
It's a pleasure, Melissa. Thanks for having me.
So, we were just chatting about how it was a while ago when we first did, I guess, the first interview we did with one another, and, people loved it. And I really want to be able to do this next one because I want to kind of get into things a little bit more that we didn't get into the first interview and talk a little bit about the well fucked woman. So, before we get into that, can you help those who don't know who you are at least understand what's your background? What is it that you do, and how did you get into this?
Well, I call myself a holistic sex and relationship coach and a vaginal weightlifter. So I teach, I work with singles and couples all over the world to help improve the quality of their intimate life. And one of the biggest messages that I have is that more sex plus better sex equals a better life, more cash, more pleasure, more job performance, even a fitter body, that everything in your life, because your sexual energy is your life force energy, it has such a powerful impact on everything that you do in your world. And so my work is to really educate people about that and then break down any kind of blocks that they have around getting to these powerful places within themselves so they can fully tap into and harness this potency of their sexual relationship. And if people aren't tapping into that power, whether they're single or in a couple, they're missing out and they're living at a deficiency. And so, and then I look at how to optimize things. Like sometimes people come to me and they're like, where I meet people and they say, oh, so you fix people who have problems. And I'm like, well, not exactly, like, sure. But, I also teach people that every woman can have a cervical orgasm. I teach men how to separate orgasm from ejaculation. And I teach people how to lift household objects with their vaginas. So my work is not just about fixing what's broken, although I don't really agree with that terminology. It's about optimizing. So, I just did a retreat in Bali last week, and I had a couple who've been together for 20 years. They act like newlyweds, like they still have an amazing sex life. They came to my retreat to find out what could they do even better, right? So they would tell you they've already got like a 9 or a 10 out of 10, and they came to get a 15 out of 10, right? And then there's some couples who had a 2 out of 10, right? If you had to rate where they were. But so everyone, it serves all people on all areas of that scale.
And that's fantastic because, we talk about sex and either people are really curious about it, or I find other people in my tribe almost feel sort of intimidated by it. And so I want to be able to sort of start off by talking about the health benefits of it, just so that we can kind of like start off from a platform which I know that my tribe is going to be totally on board with, and then sort of like tell them even more and then expand their mind even further. So what are the health benefits behind it?
Well, sex and orgasm are, it's like the magic bullet, I say, where there's so many things that are attributed to having great sex and regular orgasms. Like they are a great source of pain relief. You can relieve pain up to 70%. So if you feel like you have you have a headache or menstrual cramps, don't say, "Oh, not tonight, honey, I have a headache." You should actually be dragging your partner into the bedroom to fuck his brains out. It's immunity boosting. If you feel a cold coming on, quick, run and have an orgasm instead of like doing, you could do your hot water and lemon and honey, but also have an orgasm. It's anti-aging, so that the more sex that you have, if you have sex, I believe it's 3 to 4 times a week, you'll remove 7 physical years off of your appearance. So you'll look at least 7 years younger. There's a whole biochemical cocktail that's released on the way to orgasm just by having sex and through orgasm that's mood boosting. So it lifts depression, makes you feel more calm, centered, more sociable, more energized. Like there's all kinds of stuff in the mood, like, well-being, emotional capacity. You look more, your hair gets shinier, your skin gets more radiant. What else?
That's a lot right there.
It's a lot right there, yeah.
So, I mean, is it beneficial though if you don't get off?
There's still a lot of neurotransmitters and hormones that are released on the pathway to orgasm. So just being stimulated in that way is still very powerful. You release even more when you get to orgasm. So yes, it's still beneficial even if you don't have an orgasm, especially if you practice more expanded tantric style sex, is where you're trying to, not just have like a quickie, but like really these longer engaged sessions. Those release even more chemicals. And that's something that I talk about in my work, is how to cultivate those longer, more in-depth experiences so that you're literally harvesting the best quality energy and chemicals from your body.
Got it. And we're going to be talking, something you said off the top was vaginal weightlifting, which we definitely are going to be speaking about, because I'm pretty sure when people heard household objects, that's probably, and it's funny because I definitely want to dive into that. But before we do, is there a right way to orgasm?
Well, I would say that the only right and wrong is kind of, in my view, around sexuality, is conscious versus unconscious. So you can do any number of sex acts, and as long as you're conscious and connected to yourself, and then if you're with a partner, you're connected to your partner, it can be a powerful, transformative experience. But people who are dissociated during sex, or disconnected, or they override their body's messages and say force themselves to have sex when they don't want to, things like that, then they're not as beneficial, right? Or you'll feel probably a negative effect from that. I teach a lot of practices like tantric Taoist type practices about breathing through sex and breathing through orgasm to harvest the maximum amount of powerful energy from your experiences. To me, it's really all about energy, right? Like, yes, there's love and connection and intimacy, but on a greater, bigger picture, because sexual energy is so powerful, this is your reproductive life force energy. I teach and want everyone to know that they ought to be tapping into that so they can funnel that energy into every part of their lives. So in terms of right or wrong, I would say it's more like you're just not aware of the power that you have versus you are aware of that power and you're constantly tapping into it and harnessing it.
And so one of the things that you said was that, if you don't want to, if you're forcing it. And I have to tell you, so just recently I asked the women in my tribe, if you could say one word to describe your sex life right now, what would it be? And I'm not kidding you. These are some of the words that came out. Effort, kids was one of them, because obviously just kids and it's non-existent. One person said Netflix. So a lot of these women were essentially saying that their sex life is like down, and it's just non-existent. And what I always hear from them is that a lot of it has to do with out of whack cortisol levels. So when their stress hormones are all over the place, and then their libido suffers because they're so tired. So what sort of advice could you provide women when the last thing that they want to do is have sex because they're so tired? What do you do in that scenario? Because I find it so common.
I think the biggest thing is a mental reframe. Like, I know that you do a lot of very important and powerful work around nutrition and lifestyle, and that you address things like, things that help to build up your adrenals, let's say, right?
For sure.
And, the irony here is that one of the fastest ways to wipe out cortisol in your body is to have an orgasm, because oxytocin floods your system and it basically cancels out cortisol. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying, that if people feel like they don't even want to go there, but part of it is like really mental reframing, right? Like, people get into a rut and they get stuck, and understanding that sex will give you energy. Right? Sex is one of your greatest sources of power, confidence, and energy. And like, part of it is really just helping to persuade people to believe that, right? And to live it. And, one of the questions I ask is your sex life deeply pleasurable, massively uplifting, totally energizing, and transformative? And if it isn't, you're doing it wrong. Now, that's not a judgment. It's just to say that, this is, if there's a right and wrong, this is it, is that your sex ought to be uplifting and energizing all the time, whether it's a 5-minute, connection or an hour-long adventure with your partner or yourself, it always ought to be that result. And I teach people how to make it that way. So, I would say you just have to start small. The thing is like kickstarting, if you haven't exercised in a while, right? You're going to feel like the first couple of weeks when you get back into the gym or you go for a run, it's going to feel grueling. You're going to be pushing yourself and forcing yourself to do it. Once you get into it, once your body starts to revisit that high of all those biochemicals and feel-good hormones and the neurotransmitters, you'll want to do it. Your body will be like, hey, when are we going for that run, right? And your sex life is exactly the same, is that once you kickstart things, the momentum takes over. Now, if you're in a really, really estranged place with your partner, like you're just disgusted with each other, I don't recommend forcing the sex because you have issues that have to be resolved first. But if it's more of a matter of timing and scheduling, and you're just kind of like, in a way, making up excuses. And like I say that because I had a couple come on my retreat last year. They've been together. They're both on their second marriage. And so because of that, they were extremely committed to making this marriage work. They both came out of like dismal 15-year-long sexless marriages that they were just miserable in. And so he's the CEO of one of Canada's largest corporations. She's also in upper level management. They have 5 children between them, and they have sex every single day.
Wow.
Exactly. So when I say excuses, it's like we all have ways that we deflect, or, I guess part of it's belief system. If the sex isn't very good, then you're not going to want to have it. Who wants to have it? Right? And that's partly like what we get into with the vaginal kung fu and the vaginal weightlifting, is that most women have very numb vaginas because they're just not exercising them like they ought to be. And if you're numb, you don't want to have sex. Who would want to? You don't even feel anything. Who cares? Take it or leave it. Yeah, I'll take Netflix. Thanks very much. Because you don't even feel anything. Right? And then the other portion to that is just like dealing with sexual blocks, really owning your feminine power, learning how to let go and surrender, which are things that we all talk about in the Well Fox Women's Salon.
And I think it's really powerful that you say this, because there's so many ties in terms of what you do and then what I do, because especially when I speak to women about gynecological issues, a lot of the spiritual aspect behind that is really owning your feminine energy and that sexuality and that creative force there. So, and it even shows that sometimes, that sex can boost certain hormones like DHEA, which tends to be very low in women who are running themselves ragged and they've got adrenal fatigue. So it just goes to show that there's this amazing correlation. One of the things that you mentioned was, having a vagina that's numb, like it's numb. One of the things that I know that you speak about, and that I saw all over BuzzFeed and it went viral, was this whole thing about vaginal weightlifting. And I want you to talk about this because I know women who are listening in right now are going to go, what is she talking about? But there's so many amazing health benefits even beyond sex with this. So can you help us understand what the heck is vaginal weightlifting? And what was this whole spread that you did? Because it's phenomenal.
Thank you. So I teach another e-salon called Vaginal Kung Fu, which is all about how women can strengthen their pelvic floor and strengthen their vaginas. And so to help kind of raise awareness of this, I started this Instagram campaign earlier this year called #ThingsILiftWithMyVagina. So this features me traveling all over the world, lifting various objects. And I usually look for objects that are indigenous to the regions that I'm in. And so in Bali, I've lifted coconuts, I've lifted tropical fruit. When I've in Venice, California, I've lifted gluten-free organic donuts and cold-pressed juices and an Almeric surfboard. So I try to make them very location specific. And so, yes, this went viral, me, all over the place, hanging these things from my nether regions. And so the benefits are so many, like I said, that, from the very physical medical perspective, the stats on women who have urinary incontinence issues are astounding. Like it's thought that up to 60% of women have urinary incontinence issues, whether it's like going on a trampoline and peeing a little bit, or running, or sneezing, or needing to wear a pad. And 50% of women after childbirth have some kind of pelvic organ prolapse. So their private parts start falling out. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. And the reason why it's so ridiculous is women are taught to do their Kegels. Kegels don't work, if you need to actually build a muscle, you need resistance, you need strength. It's just like any other muscle in your body. You don't go to the gym and stare at the weights and then flap your arms around and then run home and go, God, that was the best workout ever. People think you're insane, and justifiably so. You need to actually pick up weights and press. That's how you build muscle. So the vagina is exactly the same. And so, the way that I teach it is this ancient, also Taoist practice. It's 5,000 years old of women learning how to strengthen their pelvic floor. So not only does it prevent these health issues, it strengthens, you feel more in the vagina. It becomes more sentient, more aware. You begin to feel more connected to your sexuality overall. It increases your orgasmic potential. It increases your lubrication. If you have no circulation in the vagina, you have no lubrication. That's one of the major sources for women lacking lubrication. And I've had women do my program who were in their 60s, menopause, and they were so sad because they lost their lubrication. They thought that that was why, because they were in menopause, and they were worried that they might have to go on some kind of hormones. They took my course, and within weeks they were lubricating again. And they had like tears in their eyes because they thought they would never get that back. They'd been told they'd never get that back without chemical intervention. And so it's really a matter of lubrication. And you can ejaculate. It's, when you have a strong vagina, you can properly ejaculate. Every single woman can ejaculate. Every single woman can have vaginal orgasms, G-spot orgasms, cervical orgasms. The reason why they don't is because they have weak vaginas. You can also give your man a hand job with your vagina, so you can squeeze and clench and flex and really give him a lot more pleasure, and you feel a lot more pleasure. Like, biggest thing is that you feel a lot more in your vagina, and now you want to have sex because you're feeling so much. So in a nutshell, those would be the benefits for doing the practice.
So what advice would you give to women who feel intimidated by sex or feel self-conscious about their bodies? How do they get more comfortable? It's like they'll look at certain, in the media, these svelte bodies and so forth, and some women are like, oh, and I've heard, especially women in my tribe, going, yeah, I just don't really feel comfortable in bed because I've gained 15 pounds or I gained 10 pounds. Like, what is sort of like, where should they start, at least, to start to feel more comfortable and less intimidated by the act itself?
I would say, my suggestion in that situation is own it or change it. So if you have an extra 15 pounds, you either need to immediately own what you've got and rock it and enjoy it, or commit to changing it. Meaning you hire a nutritionist, you get a trainer, you go to the gym 3 times a week. I mean, the women that you're seeing in the media with svelte bodies, they weren't just a gift from God. Those women are hauling ass to have a svelte body. It takes regular work and daily discipline, whether it's through diet and exercise and then self-love. Right? Many people emotionally overeat when they're stressed. And so you have to do the underlying work not to go there. And again, that's something else. This is a big component of the well-fucked woman, is owning that stuff. And when I see women who are, say, 15, 30, even 100 pounds overweight, and they own it, it's very rare, because most of the time those people are walking around with this cloud of shame and self-consciousness. But once in a while you see a woman or a man who just rocks it. They just love their body, all the jiggles and rolls and whatever, they're just in it. And it's so attractive. Those people are so fuckable because they're so confident. I look at them and go, wow, she's really hot, because she's just owning it. So that's what I mean. You either own it, own what you've got, because you're the only one who's responsible for it. I'm very big on self-responsibility in the work that I do, right? The faster that you take responsibility and don't project or blame or have excuses, the faster you can change it. Right? And so you either acknowledge that you're not happy where you are, and if you are, great, that's fine. Stay where you like. If you're not happy, then commit and decide where you want to be, and then take the steps to get there. And as soon as you get in motion, literally, as soon as you pick up the phone and make an appointment with a nutritionist, as soon as you hire a trainer or do a workout DVD, you will immediately feel better. You will immediately have more confidence. All you have to do is be in motion. If it's losing 15 pounds that you think is going to make all the difference, you don't have to wait till you've lost the 15. All you have to do is take the very first step. And that will be so confidence boosting for yourself that it will set you further in motion.
Absolutely. It's always about showing up, right? It's what I always say to people, just show up.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, and I have a feeling I know how you're going to answer this, but how many times should somebody be having sex in a week? Should we be having daily sex? What is the average that we really should be aiming for?
Well, the Taoists have this beautiful suggestion that sex is like the morning prayer and the evening prayer. That we connect in the morning when we wake up, even if it's for a few minutes, and in the evening before we go to bed. And my suggestion is, like, I would say like a minimum of 3 times a week. If I was dating this guy years ago, and we were living several hours apart, so we could only connect on the weekends. So on the weekends we would have sex several times, then we wouldn't see each other all week, and that was enough to really get me to continue, or to make me feel fulfilled, because those encounters were so deep and satisfying that I felt energized, and that energy carried me through the week. So if you're having really good quality gourmet sex, in theory you could have a once a week 3-hour sex date and be really fulfilled. If you're having junk food sex every day, you could still be feeling unfulfilled. So the quality is really important. And then yeah, the quality is really the most important, I would say. But in general, I would say like 3+ times a week is kind of a rule of thumb.
Okay. And so what advice would you give to women who've never had an orgasm before?
The biggest factor that contributes to your orgasm is not technique. I always say technique is about 10% of the game. 90% of it is your ability to let go and to open and surrender. If you're someone who readily admits that you always want to be in control, and you wear the pants in the relationship, you have a hard time letting go, you will also have a hard time letting go in bed. How you show up in life is how you show up in bed. How you show up in bed is how you show up in life. So the work that I do with women is often around really teaching them to open, to be comfortable, to surrender, to get much more confident in their feminine energy, their sensuality. Again, this is a big component of the well-fucked woman, so they can get to these deeper orgasmic places and overall feel better. I just came off of another retreat in Bali this week, and we had this woman who admits that she's a control freak, right? And so her whole practice over the week was trying to let her husband take control and take charge and make decisions. And we were laughing because we just got all a bit stranded in Bali from the volcano. Terrible place to be stranded, but there was volcanic eruptions in the archipelago, and lots of flights were delayed. So lots of the people on my retreat couldn't leave.
Oh, no.
Another several days, which was
You're like, oh well, you're gonna have more sex now.
I know, exactly, more home play time. And they were laughing, like, he's on the phone checking flights, and she's like trying to like let him, but she's like written this list of suggestions of all the questions that he should ask. So it was a joke, because she's like definitely making efforts to allow him more space to take control, but we're just laughing that for her it's still like she still tries to grab it back sometimes, but it's still like much better. But that's the biggest issue with orgasm, and that's why Western science is so confused about orgasm and the female orgasm, because if it can't be replicated in a lab, they can't have an explanation for it, right? So the fact that 90% of this journey is about letting go and opening up, you can't measure that in a lab. Not very easily anyway. That would be a pretty sophisticated thing to measure. They're just like, oh, you put the finger here, oh, it didn't work for her, it works for her. Those are our stats. Those are ridiculous stats.
Yeah.
They're very, very misleading. And so that's why I say that every single woman on the planet can have every single type of orgasm, because it's more an emotional process. And a little bit of technique, yeah, that's kind of important, but it pales in comparison to your ability to open.
So how about if you're single and you don't have a partner? How would you suggest that women play with themselves also 3 times a week? Like where do you start, especially for some women that, oh, I don't know. Like where would you start with single women?
For sure, that self-pleasure at least several times a week. You'll get to know your body, you'll rev up your sexual energy, you'll be infused with much more vitality. This whole thing about the well-fucked woman is this idea that when women are sexually active and sexually pleasured, they actually radiate this whole other quality. I was at my hairdresser's last week, a few weeks ago, and she'd been in this awful relationship for the last couple of years. She would be like complaining and moaning all the time, and just looked so downtrodden. I almost was going to switch hairdressers, because I was just like, enough already. And then the other week, like, she had ended up breaking up with her boyfriend a few months ago. And that last week when I went to see her, I was like, oh my gosh, you look so well fucked. And she's like, how can you tell? And I said, you're just glowing. You have so much energy. She was wearing this beautiful feminine, like low cut dress, and, just this whole other beauty and vitality about her. That's being well fucked. You actually wear it to the degree that it's visible. And so when you begin to do that, then as a single woman, you're going to attract a higher quality partner. When you're really underfucked and you're suffering and you're deficient, it's like you have this not available, go the fuck away sign all over you, and people are just like, they don't want to be part of that, your misery, even if it's like low level misery. But when you're open and you're juicy and radiant, you will attract people. And the more sex that you're having, you're radiating pheromones, and the more sex then people want to have with you, even if it's with yourself that you're having the sex.
Well, it's great advice. And so let's just say, in my relationship, this is, and I'm totally using this as an example because I'm sure my partner would be like, that's not us at all. But let's just say I'm the one with a crazy sex drive and my partner's the one with a low sex drive. Like, what would a woman do in that scenario where they're like, I want to have sex with him, but he just never seems into it? What advice can you give to women in that scenario? How do we get the men more involved if they aren't?
Honestly, I would watch some of my videos because I really talk about the benefits of having lots of sex and what it does for you and the relationship. And I have a course for men called Sexual Mastery for Men, where it's all about reviving that energy and harnessing that energy. But really, it starts with why. Right? Like, it's no use giving people sex tips if they don't even want to have sex. And so a lot of my work is explaining why anal sex brings you closer to God, why deep throating makes you a better person, why you should be eating ejaculate because it's a great health supplement. So, these are the things, like, once you hear about them, you're like, huh? And then it opens up a new doorway. And so I would suggest checking out my work because I'm one of the few people who tells you all about these multidimensional reasons why to have sex. So that's where you have to start, is the why. And, if they're low, I mean, it's probably a testosterone thing potentially too, right? Because if there's no sex drive, there's no testosterone production going on. So there's another potential nutritional or health side to it as well.
And I know, guys, some of you listening in might be going, oh my goodness, anal sex brings you closer to God and deep throating. What the heck? And to be honest with you, if you actually check out some of Kim's videos, it'll no pun intended, it'll blow your mind. It's like trying to figure out another word to use. But it really will, and it will expand your mind in terms of how sex can really benefit your health in a way that you never thought, and to bring you closer, even if you've had a somewhat stagnant relationship for some time. It can be revived, even if it's been kind of dead in the sexual department for a while. It absolutely can be revived. So with that said, can you let us know a little bit more about the Well Fucked Woman? What is this program all about? I remember, when you first launched it, and, I saw the video, which was freaking brilliant. And it's such an amazing course. And I want people to understand exactly what it entails. What is it all about? How can they benefit the whole thing?
So years ago, when I started to grow more of an international following, I realized I couldn't just coach people like one-on-one anymore because I just could only do so many people in a day. So I decided to funnel all of my knowledge into these online programs. And so the Well Fucked Woman is an 8-week course. It's comprised of weekly videos, home play assignments, and then we have Q&A calls that are live every week where people can call me up and ask questions based on the home play or just long-standing sexual questions that they have. And so the whole idea, like I said, is that when a woman is really tuned into this energy, every other part of her life benefits. And so we go through, basically it's like the how to live in a female sexual body education that everybody ought to have had but doesn't. And so we go through everything from communication skills, body image, how to love what you've got, Orgasmopedia, which is my guide to all things orgasm, sexual polarity and chemistry, how to really navigate and create powerful sparks between your partner that last a lifetime, how to get more comfortable in your feminine energy, that ability to open up, to surrender, to let go. That's one of the biggest themes of the whole 8 weeks. And we also do what I referred to, why does anal sex bring you closer to God? So how to be the ultimate lover, the ultimate seductress in terms of your skills, how to give the best blowjob, what are the secrets to deep throating, things like that. Actually, the things that require some technique, I do go into that and then explain why these sex acts are so powerful. I look at sex as this transcendent, transformative experience. And so I'm always trying to show people and communicate how that's even possible and then how you can get there. So that begins this week on Thursday. And so you have lifetime access to all of the material. You can always go through it now. You can go through it with a partner. Your partner's included in the home play assignments, or do them by yourself. And overall, like I've had people had their first cervical orgasm, had their first squirting experience, gain their lubrication back, gain their libido back, make more money. Like one of my former students says that she tripled the amount of money coming into her life, and she wasn't even trying. It was just through generating her sexual, creative, orgasmic energy. She was now attracting these things into her life.
She was stepping in her power.
Exactly, stepping into her power and channeling her sexual power. Like you actually are a fantastic example of someone who's really living their sexual creative energy, right? You're constantly engaged in new projects, you're putting yourself out there, you've got a strong vitality to you, and you're connected to your sexuality. Like I can tell that you're well fucked because you look it, you radiate it, and you're productive, you're creative. The proof is in the pudding. The proof is always in the pudding. And so you look at your outer life as this barometer. Are you feeling career-wise satisfied? Are you feeling satisfied in your body? Are you feeling satisfied with your health, in your relationship, with your financial intake? All of these things can be traced back to your sexual energy and the ebb and flow of that. So this work is all about how to connect to it in such a way that it then begins to influence and uplift, empower every other part of your life.
That's fantastic. So for women, watching this interview, what is sort of the age range? Because maybe there's some women watching going, I don't know, that's not for women my age. Like, what is sort of the age range that you've seen across the board, for this program and even in your career? Because I know you've been doing this for a while and you really are the expert at this. So what's the age range so that it probably will shock people?
From early 20s, even late teens, to mid 70s. I've had people in every range. I mean, probably like the bulk of the people are in their 30s and 40s, but absolutely, I have 20-somethings. Like just at my retreat, we had some 20-somethings that were there, like new relationship. And then I've had a 72-year-old man come to my retreat before. So, it absolutely runs the gamut. And so you'd be comfortable at every level that you're at. There's stuff for everybody.
That's awesome. So if people want to be able to check out your program, where do they go to actually check it out, so we can actually leave a little link below?
Yeah, so it's kiminami.com, and then we'll send you the link. It's kiminami.com, The Well Fucked Woman, and the registration page. It's open. The registration's open till Friday midnight PST, and then the program actually begins on Thursday, so it begins the prior day.
That's awesome. Well, I am super excited to be able to share this with my tribe. I think this is going to be great. I think it's a big life changer. I know quite a few people from my tribe members have actually already purchased, your salons and so forth. And I think that it's going to change lives because, like you said, it helps people step into their power. And that, when you do that, your whole world opens up, so long as you can just learn to let go. And that in itself can be so absolutely powerful. So thank you so much. I know you're incredibly busy. I want to connect with you again because we spoke years ago, and it's just always great to chat with you. I'm always learning something new from you.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks, Kim. Take care.